the West Tigers podcast. We're up to episode number 80. Eddie Otto, will the West Tigers make the top 8 in 2020? Yes or no?
No, Joel. I know we're sitting 8th. We managed to lose the last 2 games and go up the ladder or stay in 8th. It's a bit of a crazy competition, but yeah, the run we got home, I'm going to say no. What about you?
I'm still sitting on the fence. Yeah, we put up on the Facebook page this afternoon that very question. Will we make the 8? So far, people sitting about 50-50, maybe a slight tendency more towards the no's. The earlier responders were probably the most optimistic, and then things have become a little bit more pessimistic.
How about you put up a poll, Joel? Will we run 9th? You'll probably get about 80% of people say yes, and then we won't have to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question is there a greater possibility that, well, knowing us, we'll probably finish 10th, but not 8th. That's my feeling.
I just think it's all the planets are aligning again to finish 9th. I look at those teams in behind us, Joel, and they look pretty ordinary, a lot of those teams. But it makes you it's a good question because, we got Broncos this week, and 2 of the sides are, Manly are below us, and they're ravaged by injury, and Canberra are above us, and they're completely ravaged by injury. So it's still all to play for, but I just think the run home looks a bit trickier than the start of the comp for us.
Yeah. No, look, I've just gone through it again in my mind as you were talking about. I'm still saying yes. I'm saying a squeak in for 8th place. That's my gut feeling at this moment. I'm not going to give up just yet, because what I liked about the Tigers' last 2 performances, and where I think, and it is, I am very much putting my optimist hat on here. But what I like about it is that in the Penrith game, we didn't go to pieces. It didn't end up 40-10 or 32-2 or anything like that. It ended up being a pretty tight grind. And even the Souths game, you take a couple of those factors out of that game, we were pretty much in it the whole way. We didn't go to water. And Souths played a pretty good game. They certainly had to play slightly above where they've been to get the 2 points. So I'm not feeling that pessimistic at this point.
I know what you're saying. It's probably been 5 straight weeks, Joel, of where your team walks off the field and you think, well, they gave it a really good crack tonight. They played hard. They're playing, more for longer. They're not sort of drifting in and out of games. But my problem is, if you look at the Souths team and the West Tigers team last week, and you went through the 1 to 7, I don't think there'd be a Tigers player that would make the Souths team. Now, you could probably argue Nofaluma on form would maybe make the Souths team, but you look at that backline Souths had, and every single one of them was quicker than our players. And that's the problem I have going forward, is that as much effort as we put into games and as much as we hang in games, are we capable of beating a side like Souths or Penrith if they're near their best? I don't think we are.
Well, it's interesting. Just a couple of thoughts that I had post the Souths game. I thought we looked really flat. I think that Penrith game really took a lot out of the team. And when you're already down a couple of players, and then we lost a couple of more players out of that Penrith game, I think that really took a toll because the guys looked flat. They just didn't have a lot of leg drive. So I think the injuries are starting to take their toll. I think the refereeing again there was a couple of decisions that didn't go our way. That if they had gone our way, might have changed the way that game was flowing. But I just think it's interesting because I would say that after the Penrith game, they were just as exhausted and just as physically beat up as the West Tigers. But isn't it a sign of I guess, how much further ahead a team like Penrith is? That they didn't seem to have any hangover from that at all. They went on and played even better football.
Yeah, I saw a bit of that. And, a dry weather for a quicker team like that, you can really see the potential they have. And that's the issue with me. I almost felt like on a wettish sort of a slippery Bankwest, that almost keeps us in the game a bit. Whereas, if that was a day game, some of those tries, Souths were 4 tries to 0. And if Reynolds had kicked a few of those goals, it might have been 24-26-0 before we made that comeback. But, Ben Cummings, I've never, ever liked Ben Cummings, Joel. I just think he's an arrogant referee. We've never, ever seemed to be on the right side of him. And I just think the refs have, even though I love the 6 again rule, I still think they've lost the plot a bit. I think they're giving way too many 6 agains when they don't really need to. I think we were down 5-0 in the 6 agains, and that takes the air out of you, especially coming off that Penrith game.
Yeah, but I think the mechanics of that is, I don't think it's really an anti-West Tigers thing. I think it's anti the way that we're playing the game. So we're trying to hang in there with lousy line speed. So, our guys looked like they were running with concrete shoes on. I mean, we had no line speed. So basically, and you could see that Souths had plenty of energy. When they were running the ball, they were making big impacts. So they were getting over the top of us all the time. And really, when you are getting dominated around the ruck, when the other team has that ascendancy, all you can really do is try and slow the ruck down. So I think there is a big factor in that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think South beat us in the forwards, and that's probably the disappointing thing for Madge is that, even though South's a pretty experienced sort of side, they're not as strong in the forward pack as they have been in previous years. So they deserve maybe a few of those penalties. But again, Joel, the problem is, like you mentioned it there, we have to hang in games, and teams with less talent generally use those spoiling sort of tactics. So until we can get a little bit more talent, I know I'm a broken record, a little bit more pace, I reckon we'd be the slowest side in the comp. Just going through our 1 to 17, I don't think we've got enough X factor. Harry Grant's been great, but he's not the sort of guy who's going to be, he's not a Kalen Ponga or a Tedesco or a Blake Ferguson or someone like that. Until we can find a couple of those, it's going to be a grind against those teams above us on the ladder. And we need little bits of luck to go our way, which maybe haven't in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think that Souths, obviously, they've got the most experienced coach. He would have looked at all of our games and said, if you want to beat West Tigers, really good line speed, really lots of impact when carting the ball up, get it over the advantage line, and that generally should be enough. Because if you're doing that, then that speed in the back line becomes a factor. It was providing them with space, and then you've got James Roberts and you've got all these other speedy players. And that is the recipe to beat West Tigers. It's basically what Penrith did the week before. That is the game plan when you play this.
Yeah, and we thought our right side was the problem, but it was our left side. I felt a bit sorry for Hoffman on debut because some of those tries weren't his fault. I thought he played pretty hard and probably a little bit unlucky for me to be dropped. I was more disappointed in the two guys on his inside, Moses and Luke Brooks, come up with a couple of poor decisions. But like you said, Souths were dominating possession and the ball. So I don't know if we can crucify them, but as senior players, I thought they let him down a couple of times there.
Yeah, I think so too. What I saw of Reece was somebody who, he cleaned up nicely a couple of times. He's inexperienced. He's probably 12 or 18 months off. And unfortunately, we're not in a situation where he can, he hasn't played a game in how long and thrown straight into first grade because we've got no reserve grade. So all the factors were against him. I wouldn't be surprised, and we'll look at the Broncos game a little bit closer shortly, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Reece Hoffman up against the Broncos this week and a bit of a tweaking of that back line that was named. The other point I'd like to make about the Souths game is, once again, I think the most evident fact, aside from our lack of pace out wide, again, Eddie, broken record stuff, we're just missing, well, aside from the goal kicker, we're just missing that one forward who can lead this team. A Jared Warrior-Hargraves type front rower who takes the game by the scruff of the neck, gets across the advantage line and leads the forward pack. We just don't have that leader.
No, we don't. You're right. We're one short there, but they sort of don't grow off trees, those guys. You've got to be careful. I think we tried to recruit someone like that in Russell Packer and Ben Madalino, and it hasn't worked out because they were probably past their best. Someone like Hargraves is a good example of a guy who's a forward leader, and obviously we go back to Gareth Ellis. We've never been able to replace him, but they're hard to find. But I'd definitely be interested in someone like a Corey Harawira-Naera. Apparently he's got he's not too happy with Canterbury at the moment. So we'll wait and see. It'd be good to get Alex Twal back, but like you said, he's not really that intimidator, is he?
No, he's not. Zane Musgrove, who has the raps, we're yet to really see that from Zane Musgrove. And of course, with that foot injury, he'll be out for a little while anyway. So that's a moot point. Just on that recruitment news, Corey Harawira-Naera, according to somebody on the forum who seems to be pretty well connected, could be down to just us and Manly to get his signature. But you're right, apparently he won't be lining up for Canterbury. Very unhappy with the way he's been treated. Apparently, we have tried to get him in the past, so he could be a good addition. And an addition, if we could add maybe next week or in the next couple of weeks, I think would be a big help because we're lacking a couple of players.
Yeah, no, a couple of people who watch the game closely rate him really, really highly. So he's a really good player, and obviously with a point to prove. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see where all the cards fall, Joel, because you go through our top 30 or top 29, whatever it is at the moment, and I'm not going to name all the names, but you could still probably go through 8 or 10 guys who you would consider close to deadwood, or guys that would be moved on at the end of the year, and a fair amount of money. So I look forward to that a little bit.
Just before we look at that Broncos game and the other news around that, did you see? I sat there on Sunday afternoon watching Parramatta and Newcastle. I don't know if you watched it too, but it was actually quite a quality game. But I must say, I had an ulterior motive. I was sitting there waiting for Stefano Utoikamanu to play, and he got 10 seconds.
Well, at least he was excited about his 10 seconds, Joel. He was hugging family afterwards, which you're not allowed to do apparently these days.
That's right. Yeah. But I mean, what I don't understand. I mean, yeah, you might not throw. The game was in the balance for sure, and maybe that's a sign of how far Parramatta is along as compared to West Tigers in terms of resources. Like, they've had a pretty good injury run, but our bench seems to be every week we're squeezing every last drop out of our bench. They had a 120 kilo prop on their bench that they didn't even use essentially.
Yep. Yeah, no, you're right, and you can't criticise Brad Arthur because they went up to Newcastle and won the game. So annoying for Tigers fans who were sitting down to watch that. But yeah, it's probably the fact the game was right in the balance and disappointing. But he will get a couple of cracks, I'm sure, before the end of the year. Never be ours.
Well, it'd be nice if he was here a little bit earlier, but I can't see that happening. But we can live in hope. The big news on the West Tigers front this week has been the moving of Luke Brooks from the jersey that he's owned for what seems like years and years and years onto the bench. Basically, Michael Maguire saying it was because of the defensive issues, but I think there's more to that. There's more. It's got to be. We spoke about it last week. Game management. He just hasn't been able to go to that next level. Although I must, without saying that I'm the greatest Luke Brooks fan in the world, when your forward pack isn't winning, as we've said many times before, it's very hard for the halfback to shine.
Yeah, this is the $64,000 question. This one with Luke Brooks, and I've sort of toed and froed. I think we've talked about in the last few weeks the fact that he's been a bit quiet. Only a couple of try assists for the year. I don't know if that's true, but I read that on the forum. And if that's, I know he doesn't have a lot, but 2. I mean, that's pretty disappointing for a halfback after 8 or 9 rounds. We know it's been in the press that he was dropped because he missed 7 or 8 tackles. But the fact is, he's also not creating tries. So I think it's a bit of both at the moment. I think with what Madge is doing with this team and his mentality at the moment, I think it's a good thing because I think it's been 6 years of Luke Brooks, and I don't want to say it's been an easy ride, Joel, but he's always been pretty much an automatic pick, and that can create a comfort in a player. Doesn't matter who you are or what club you're at, and I think he's at that point in his career where he needs a rocket. He needs to either go to the next level or disappear, because I think Madge has sort of seen that this has been his career. Some decent performances, but not controlling games. Defense has been really good generally the last couple of years, but I just think it's more him trying to send a message to him rather than the fact that he thinks we're going to be a better team without Luke Brooks.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is the big question, isn't it? And it's a really hard question to answer. I would say that I think that he has struggled a little bit. And again, I'm not making apologies for him, but I think he struggled a little bit by the fact that Luke Garner isn't on that left edge with him. I mean, that was a really good combination that they struck up last year, and we scored a lot of tries off that. Of course, Leilua's on the left side now, and that was to try and tighten up the right-hand side defence. But I think that's sort of taken a bit of shine off him. But I think that, as you say, after 6 years of it's not quite working, you need to rethink it and try something different. He's signed for another couple of years. I don't see Luke Brooks going anywhere. But I just think, once again, I think the common sense thing to do is to put an organising half next to him. Somebody, because they're playing left and right. It's not like the old days. He's pretty much a left edge specialist, but find a good right edge organising halfback, and I think we're going to look a whole lot better.
Yeah, well, just a guy that come to mind is someone like Blake Green. I know he's older, but he's the sort of guy who sort of directs a team around the park. I'm not saying he'd be a great signing, but someone who likes his hands on the ball and doing all the kicking, and then you sort of allow Luke Brooks to run. It's a really interesting one because, like you said, you can't see him being moved on or anything like that. He's long-term under contract, and I think he's in our best team. I still think he's in our best starting team. But, it gets to that point, where even, I'll use the cricket analogy, even some of the greatest players, Ricky Ponting and these guys who went on to score hundreds and hundreds, they were all dropped at some point in their career. And they all sort of go back to that and say, well, that made me a better player because I went back and looked and thought, what have I got to do to get back? And I had to do some self-analysis of my own game. And maybe the fact that the Tigers have been a mediocre side for 6 years and he knows he's going to get picked every week, maybe that has sort of staled his game. And maybe it's good because, I've been pretty, I think he's been really good the last couple of years in a side with not many targets out wide. But I think his performances this year have dropped off a bit.
And again, I have watched many, probably hundreds of games of rugby league where you have a classy halfback who is not seen when the team is the forwards are getting dominated by the other team. It just for some reason, well, it's not a mystery, but teams that don't have strong forward packs generally have halfbacks that struggle.
Well, look at the last 2 weeks of Manly. Daryl Cherry-Evans has been invisible.
Not the same player.
Yeah. Not the same player. No Tom Trbojevic out the back to get all those, try assists for him and no forward pack rolling down the middle. So that's a fair point and something that you could use in Luke Brooks's defence. And, like I said, I don't think Madge is doing this because he thinks we're going to be a better side without Luke Brooks. I could be wrong, but I think he's trying to light the fire within him.
Yeah, and I think you have to also factor in, and I don't mind if Michael Maguire decides that Luke Brooks isn't the best option for the club and even moves him on. I'm happy to back the coach on this. But, also have to take into the fact of how much impact is Moses Mbye having outside of him. I mean, it looks a lot different when you've got Steve Renouf on the outside of you as opposed to someone like Moses Mbye, who is not a known attacking centre.
Well, he's a nothing at the moment. And I don't want to be too harsh, but it's starting to infuriate me a little bit that this guy is Moses Mbye is our captain. And I thought, he was equally as bad, if not worse, than Luke Brooks this week. And he seems to be the one that seems to escape this at the moment, this culling that's going on of some of the senior players. But anyway, he's not dropped completely. He's on the bench. I wouldn't be surprised, Joel, if he still plays more than 40 minutes. I know you'll preview the Broncos game in a minute, but there's the overall picture of the spine. I think, a month ago, we probably thought, we've got our spine sort of in gear, but there's a lot of question marks in there because, we don't quite know if Dewey's a fullback. We think Harry Grant's probably going to have to go back to Melbourne. We think probably Benji's going to retire and then Josh Reynolds, who knows where he's going to be. And then if you throw, dropping Luke Brooks in, it'd be interesting to know Madge's thoughts on the long-term spine because it's sort of, it's a bit muddy, even though there's some players there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah. So apparently Josh Reynolds was lined up to go back to the Bulldogs, and that was one of the issues with Dean Pay exiting Bulldogs, is that he wanted to sign Josh Reynolds, and the board didn't back him there. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if you could move Josh Reynolds on, you're going to move Josh Reynolds on, aren't you? And Benji, even if Benji plays very well, I don't think Benji's capable of playing like 2005 Benji for the rest of this year. I think Benji's got to retire too. So, there are plenty of questions there. And Harry Grant, for sure, you just about bet him he's going back to Melbourne. There are lots of questions there.
If I just on Harry Grant, I saw his comments during the week and he said all the right things. He was always going to say, this was the deal. And I think I'd say he is 80 or 90% likely to go back to Melbourne at the end of the year, Joel. But would you say, what would you say if you said, how about from not 2021, but 2022, we could offer him, the captaincy and $800,000 a year? Would you be for that? Would that be tempting?
No.
You wouldn't do that?
I think he's come back to the field a little bit the last couple of weeks. I think he's injured, which isn't helping. I'm not doubting that he's a classy player, but I don't see him as being, at this point, I see him as being a very, very good first grader and a state of origin player, but I maybe don't see him as somebody that can't be replaced.
I don't know. I think he's going to be pretty special player, and just leadership. That's the other thing. I just think he's got the intangibles. I'd be very tempted if we get once this Packer and Reynolds and Moses cash clears up, I'd be very tempted to offer him a long-term deal on big money because I think he ticks all the boxes: key position, tough, leadership qualities. I'd be tempted to make a big move for him long term, even if he's going back to the Storm. But we'll see.
Okay. I come from the position of once bitten, twice shy. I mean, there's been so many guys that have come through, they've looked fantastic in their first year, and clubs have offered them the world, and they just haven't been able to back it up. I mean, you look at Luke Brooks, the first year of Luke Brooks in first grade.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this guy is amazing.
But I mean, on the flip side of that, Joel, how many guys have we seen leave young in their careers and go on to great things at other clubs?
Yeah, I know. Oh, well, we'll just wait and see with that.
Yeah.
On to that Broncos game. It was certainly quite an interesting video when I watched it come out. Chris Lawrence named officially in the centres. Tommy Talau's back on the wing, as we've already alluded to. Walters and Marshall in the halves. Packer at prop. And then that bench, Brooks and McQueen and McKaylee and McIntyre. Good to see Sam McIntyre back. But then it was quite interesting after that, the shadow players. Oliver Clark, who I don't think has done anything particularly wrong. I would have had him on the bench for sure, because as it is, I think the bench looks pretty light. Also, Michael Cheekham. And good to see Sean Blore named. Hopefully that is a sign that Sean's closer to seeing first grade. And Reece Hoffman is there as well. I have a feeling there's ducks and drakes being played.
Okay, yeah, it was an interesting team. There's no doubt about that. Starting with the Brooks news. Yeah, it depressed me a little bit, this team, Joel, because I sort of looked at it and I thought, we've got 3 or 4 injuries, which is probably about par for most clubs. Some have got a huge injury toll. We've got a sort of medium one. And I looked at that team and I just thought, geez, it looked uninspiring to me. I mean, Chris Lawrence in the centres in 2020. It's not 2010 anymore. Russell Packer starting prop. I don't know. I think he's deserved that. Benji back at halfback. And then you've got McQueen. Probably deserves an opportunity, but the team did not excite me, Joel, when I saw it on paper. And I'm not bagging Madge for that selection. I just sort of looked at it and I thought, geez, we've got a fair way to go to build a top 4 roster.
Yeah. And I mean, Elijah Taylor is gone, which I thought was interesting. Why are we? I know we're in unprecedented times, and it is strange times, and that is no doubt having an influence on some of the selections that are being made. And I know the injuries and suspensions now haven't helped, but surely I don't think we're going to see Chris Lawrence line up in the centres. I just don't see it. I think it's going to be Tommy Talau in the centres and Reece Hoffman on the wing.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see that, because I think we've got to start to get some of these young players ready for NRL, because we've got to regenerate this side. To his credit, Chris Lawrence, I thought, played pretty well last week in the centres. He ended up starting the game, and I thought he did a good job on James Roberts. I was worried about that matchup. I think he was on Roberts, or it might have been the other centre he was up against, but he will be caught out at some stage in the centres. But I think the night game might help him when it's a bit slower and a bit slipperier. I'd be more looking at replacing the captain, moving Tal out of the centres and bringing Hoffman onto the wing. I thought he might have ran. There was a rumour he might run Moses at 6, but I'm glad to see Billy Walters get a crack, because I think that's his natural position. So he's got a little combination there with Harry Grant from Queensland Cup. So that's exciting.
Would you rather sacrifice the year and leave people like Russell Packer and Chris McQueen out and run the youngsters?
Well, my point is, I don't think it is sacrificing the year, because I don't think it'll be any worse without him. And that's just how I see it. I just don't think putting Hoffman in there and leaving Lawrence out means we're giving up on the year. Because I just don't think some of those older blokes can provide anymore. But I know what you mean. Like, as sort of, we've only won 4 games out of 9, but as it stands, Joel, we're coming 8th, and if we win on Friday night, we'll probably come 6th. So it's a big game. So I was a little bit, when I saw Brooks was dropped to start with, I thought, I sort of like it, but I sort of don't, because it's not like the year's over. This is a big game, and our halfback's been dropped to the bench. And if we lose this game, we're in sort of real trouble, because this has got to be two of the next three have got to be gimmies. Brisbane and the Warriors, either side of Parramatta, we've got to win both of them.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the Souths game, and probably to a degree in that, well, definitely in that Penrith game, because we've lost 2 players. But our biggest problem, aside from goal kicking and aside from a few other things, but the thing that always stands out to me every week is we just seem to have such little thrust off the bench. The bench continues to be a problem. And you go back to the days when we had Marty Tapau and James Gavet and a few others on the bench, and we were able to replace our starting props and our forward pack with some impact. If you look at some teams, they actually have just as much impact or sometimes more impact off the bench. Our bench is just, this bench, if it stays the way it is you've got Chris McQueen, who hasn't played a game of football for probably 8 months. McKaylee, who is probably not living up to quite the expectations that we had of him. I just don't think he's settled into it. Luke Brooks and Sam McIntyre, there's just not much there as far as I'm concerned.
No, it's not a particularly strong bench and hasn't been all year for me, which shows to me that the depth in the club is not quite there at the moment. But I don't think that's the biggest problem heading into next year, because I think you throw Alex Twal back into that team and Zane Musgrove, and then you get Stefano. I think I can see what Madge is doing there. I think you'll get stronger packs and stronger benches. I think the greater problem is the lack of speed out wide and maybe just the lack of a class X factor sort of player. Where do you think Luke Brooks will come on? What do you think the plan might be there?
Well, I mean, maybe the idea is to ship Billy Walters to hooker and run him in the halves. I think that's probably the most logical thing.
I didn't like what they did last week, taking Harry off. I know he's probably a bit tired, but when finally we got some possession and stuff, he was off the field. I just think my plan would be to run, Billy at the start with Benji, maybe see who's going the better of the two, and then get Luke Brooks into the game in his natural position and keep Harry Grant at 9. I don't like shuffling spines all over the place when you've got a 6 going to 9 and guy off the bench coming 7 and blah, blah, blah. I think a straight swap between Brooks and Benji, or Brooks and more likely Brooks and Walters, and keep Harry at 9. That'd be my plan.
Yeah. I think the thing that probably had me scratching my head as much as anything was you've got Oliver Clark, who has basically been relegated, and Russell Packer straight back in at prop. Would you not have named Oliver Clark at least on the bench, or Russell Packer on the bench, and keep Oliver up front? I don't think he hasn't let anyone down. He's not an impact prop, but I thought he's defensively he's been pretty good, and he's been doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can say he hasn't let anyone down, but I think he lacks impact. I've sort of thought that the last few weeks. I think he's like you said, he's defending pretty well, but I mean, 60, 70 metres game is not going to cut it for a first grade starting prop in a side without an enforcer. So it's I'm not saying Russell Packer is the solution, but he's been given a bit of rope here by Madge and said, let's go. You're on $700,000 a year. You're on a 4-year deal. You're meant to be a leader in this club and this team. Go and show us something, because what you showed us 2 or 3 weeks ago was poor. I don't know how long he's going to last, Packer, but maybe he thinks just a bit of fire and brimstone in that first 20, 25 minutes, Joel.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it's controlled aggression and not what we saw against Canberra.
Yeah, exactly.
We come back to the old West Tigers thing too. There is an element of the Broncos. Yeah, they beat the Bulldogs, but that's not saying a whole lot. It is a game that the Tigers are going, even though potentially we've got a lot more points in the bank and we are potentially playing better. It's a game that the Tigers are going to have to be on their game to win.
Well, the side we're running out, Joel, we could play any team, and I think we're going to have to play pretty well to win, because it doesn't look like there's a whole heap of tries and creativity in this team. So we're going to the attitude's going to have to be good, because I think Brisbane have got a lot of injuries at the moment. So this is a game we really should be winning, but they do have some young guys with a bit of talent. And if you give them a sniff, remember that baby Broncos game all those years ago, they sort of ran all over a more experienced side. So it's got a little bit of reminds me of that a little bit if we're not on our game. So back at Leichhardt, I'm excited about that. I'm expecting to go to the game on Friday night. I know they'll only be capped at 4,000 or 5,000 or whatever, but trust me, when there's small crowds at Leichhardt, you can hear everything said And let's hope we can make a bit of an atmosphere and give it to some of those Broncos, Queensland.
Yep, fingers crossed. As you say, I think it is very much a must-win game for confidence as much as the 2 points, I think. If you're playing a team that's gone as badly as Brisbane has over the last couple of months, you need to get the 2 points.
Well, I mean, and then it's a 5-day turnaround or 6-day turnaround into Parramatta, Joel. So if you lose this one, you're 4-6 and not much chance against Para. The season's getting away from you. Whereas if you can win this one, get back to 50-50, I wouldn't be confident against Parramatta, but you go in with a bit more momentum and you stay in the 8 before you play the Warriors. So, yeah, big game. I think it's going to be ugly. I think if our attitude's right, we'll probably win.
Yeah. All right. Should we leave it there?
Yeah, do you want to give quick tips for the games for this week? I've got them in front of me.
Yeah. I was just going to say the West Tigers tipping competition, for West Tigers podcast tipping competition. I just had a look. I'm 10 off the pace. See, I couldn't see you, so I don't know where you are. So
yeah,
I'm 43 and 53 is the leading.
Yeah. All right. Well, 10 off's probably, it's probably a fair way off, Joel, although I don't know if you've got a joke around or anything like that. But Roosters versus Raiders. This is a grand final replay, but I don't think it's going to live up to the hype.
No, you've got to tip the Roosters, don't you? And once again, I mean, I watched that game last week against the Cowboys, and they are so ruthless. There were times there they were well in ahead, 20 points ahead of the Cowboys, and Cowboys attacking their line, and they just defend like their lives are based. Yeah. So yeah, and you can they've got classy players and the sombrero jokes and everything like that. But a lot of that is just attitude.
Yeah, it took the words out of my mouth, Joel. I think Trent Robinson, I mean, they've got 6 or 7 injuries at the moment, but you see the way they play every week. Whoever comes into that side does a job. So I think they'll win. Canberra have got a heap of injuries. I think they're in trouble, Canberra. I think they might miss the 8. Storm should beat the Titans in Melbourne.
Yep.
Or wherever they're playing, won't be in Melbourne. Storm. Dragons against the Bulldogs. Can the Bulldogs lift under their interim coach, Steve Georgalis?
Steve Georgalis. No, I think the Dragons have found a bit of form. You'd be hard to tip.
Yeah, I think Canterbury's nailed on for the wooden spoon. I think I tipped that the year, Joel. I can't remember, but I'm hoping that's on tape. I think I said Bulldogs will get spoon.
We'll
Dragons win that.
When we go back.
Yeah. South Newcastle. This would be a good game. I think South are on the up.
Yeah, but I'm tipping Newcastle. I like what I saw against the Eels. They just lacked a little bit of finesse. The Knights.
Yeah, I think. Pong has been a bit quiet the last couple of weeks, but I'll go South. But that'll be a close game. I've got my upset of the year here. Well, I don't know about the year, but upset of the week. I think Manly at home will beat Parramatta because I just think Parramatta are due a loss and Manly always playing well at Brookvale.
No, they're due a loss next week, so they'll beat Manly. Okay, they're getting close to a loss.
Yeah. Warriors playing the Sharks. I think that'll be on the Central Coast.
Sharks were pretty bad last week against the Panthers, weren't they? But hard to tip the Warriors.
Yeah, I think Sharks have got points in them. They'll beat Warriors. Panthers, Cowboys. Panthers should win.
Panthers, yep.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. Because, I was sort of down in the dumps after the last 2 losses, but I looked up at the table, Joel, we're still 8th. So if we can get a win on Friday, you can enjoy the rest of the games. So
are you tipping the Tigers?
Yeah, I'm going to go 18-12 in a sort of scrappy affair.
Okay. Yeah, I think. Well, I don't have a whole lot of faith. Something inside of me is saying don't be too confident because I can see it playing out already. As you say, not a lot of points in the Tigers team, but hey, we love them, so we've got to tip them.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right. See you soon, Eddie. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. See ya.